Okay, I was self-conscious, but at the same time, I just couldn't be bothered to care. You know what I mean?
Mm. So what are some of the interests that you've managed to pursue being where you're at?
So, I mean, football's one. So I play for the university team. I haven't played that much this year because busy with studies. But the other thing that I am a part of is actually the Pokemon Society, and so I didn't realize. Yeah, so I love it because you've got other people who play Pokemon, and there've been like you can partake in like Pokemon tournaments among universities around the UK, and I think it's incredible. There was a recent tournament that I competed in as part of the university team, and that went pretty well for us. We actually um, won the tournament, so that was a lot of fun.
What goes
And
on in a Pokemon tournament?
so it depends on what tournament it is, but this one it's a draft tournament. So basically, how much? Basically, Pokemon you've got a lot of different Pokemon. So at the start of a tournament, there's like all these Pokemon, and you have a certain number of points. So each Pokemon, depending on how good it is, it's valued at a certain number of points.
Mm.
So for example, a really good Pokemon's maybe 10 points, another one's like 5 points. And so you basically you start off with maybe like 100 points, and so you have to draft a team of your Pokemon. And so each of us does that, and then throughout every week you sort of play one game against your opponent, and then it's like because it was a you were playing for your university. We had teams, so even if you lose one week, you weren't technically knocked out as long as the rest of your team won. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah,
Ooh. It sounds a little bit like fantasy football.
it's sort of like that. Yeah, it's sort of like fantasy football, but yeah, you just play a more active role in whether you win or lose. Yeah.
How did you get into that?
So I've loved Pokemon since I was a kid, and I used to. I mean, I used to stay up. Hide under the covers playing Pokemon. All
Aww.
the stuff. I used to collect the cards, so I've always been a huge Pokemon fan. And so, but then it felt weird because it's sort of like when we were kids, everyone played Pokemon. Then suddenly it wasn't cool to play Pokemon anymore.
Uh-huh.
And then nobody admitted they played Pokemon. A lot of people still did, but nobody just admitted it because it's like, oh,
Uh-huh.
Pokemon, what's that? It's a kid's game. And then suddenly you're in university and everyone here is like, oh yeah, I love Pokemon. I played all the time. And it's just really
Mm.
interesting how that happens. Yeah.
Do you feel like, okay, one thing I noticed is kids when they're young, they avoid doing things that they think are uncool. But as you grow older, I think you begin to care less about what people think is like cool or uncool. And so you just do whatever you want, right? Like yeah, you just do whatever you want, and maybe you're not always proud of it, but you're not necessarily embarrassed by it. Like, you might find it a little bit funny. It's like, okay, for example, now, like, I have a lot of my friends my age who are into watching kids' cartoons. So, my personal favorite, I love My Little Pony. The new reboot of My Little Pony from the last 10 years. That's my thing. I love it. I've got friends who are into, what's that, Miraculous Ladybug?
Yeah.
Tangled Adventure, which I do want to watch. Yeah, just that kind of thing. And I love that people are not embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like there's this, yeah, we're caring less about what other people think of our hobbies and all that stuff, right? Which is
Yeah.
a good thing, I feel.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think it's like just part of growing up, you know, letting go of whatever other people's conceptions might be. Do you feel like when you were growing up, you were like a self-conscious person?
Not as self-conscious. I mean, I think I was definitely self-conscious, but okay, I was self-conscious, but at the same time, I just couldn't be bothered to care. You know what I mean?
Mm. So you were like aware, but it didn't really affect you.
I was too lazy to like change. Yeah. I could have changed, yeah, but I can't be bothered.
Do you feel like you were forced to mature by going to university in a country by yourself?
Like, I think everything was relatively easy for me, except for sort of like, okay, realize, like, I think you're finally at a point where you have to take responsibility for your own things. Like, I think that's like, when you're living with like your parents or whatever, there's like sort of like a safety mechanism to fall back upon, right? And so, um, you could always rely on that. And I think going overseas, especially in a country that you don't really know, you don't have that anymore. Like, yes, my parents are always there if I need help or whatever, but you need to take like you need to. You're at a point where you sort of have to realize, okay, I can't, like, if I don't clean up my room, there's nobody who's gonna tell me to clean up my room
Mm.
and that kind of thing. So sometimes it's great. Like, if I have dishes in the sink, I can leave the dishes in the sink and there's no issue. But then, like, nobody's gonna come
But
and
3 days
say, oh,
later, it's not so fun.
exactly. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where there's good and bad. It's a double-edged sword. Yeah. And then the other thing is also like, yeah, you have to study on your, like, you have to find the will to study on your own. There's nobody who really pushes you saying, oh, you've got to study. Like, even in Singapore, like, you sort of had that pressure to study, because if you were in your room, or if you were just in your room doing random stuff, not studying, your parents are gonna be like, why aren't you studying? You know what I mean? Even if they don't take an active interest in making sure you're studying, they'll be like, oh, why are you so free all the time? But here, nobody has that. So you've got to really just have a motivation to study on your own. And my motivation comes from not wanting to fail everything.
Fair. Is your course pass fail or is it graded?
No, so last year was pass fail, but this year it's going to be graded. So we'll see how that goes.
How did that change your studying style?
So I'm studying a lot harder now. I was studying a lot harder, then I felt sick, and so now I'm behind, and so the motivation to study is lost a bit, but it's getting back. I'm getting there. And then, fortunately, what they do is they give you a reading week. So basically, it's sort of like a 1 week break where you're able to catch up with all the reading you haven't finished. So I'm using that to my full. I'm gonna have to use that to the fullest to actually study. Yeah.
Do you have like friends in your course who are going through the same thing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think last year. I think also it's gotten more difficult this year. And so certain things that you could get away with, like just having a cursory knowledge of, you can't do that anymore because it's a lot more in depth. And so I think some of us, I mean, I've got a few friends who are struggling because last year they didn't need to study that much, and but this year now, in order to keep up, and it's you've definitely got to study. And I guess also it's the pressure, because now that everything counts, you're definitely a lot more motivated to study. Because last year there were points where you're like, okay, does it really matter? It's not graded, it's fine. And then you sort of like, you do something else, for example. Yeah. But now there's this sort of like, there's this voice in the back of your head saying, hang on, it's graded, you've got to study harder now. Yeah.
What would you say are the main differences between the culture of working in Singapore versus the UK?
For studying, so in the UK, the principle is more like you study hard in the day, then you go out and you have fun at night, or do whatever you want to do at night. In Singapore, it's more like you study hard in the day and then you study even harder at night, right? So I think that's the main difference. They're saying, okay, you've got to study, like there's time to like enjoy yourself in the UK. I think that's one of the big differences. Not a lot of time, but I mean, especially for law. I'm sure for the other subjects, there's a lot more time, but for law, it's there's less.
So, like, as homeschoolers, right, we still get like the perception that you don't know how to socialize. Do you feel that making friends came a lot easier after you started going to university? Because I realized that when people ask me how I make friends as a homeschooler who isn't really participating in like group activities that most homeschoolers would, like co-ops or like sports groups or whatever, I like have to go and put myself out there. And that is like very similar to how an adult makes friends. They have to like decide they want to do something and then go and do it. How has like making friends changed for you since going to school?
I think I mean, I know exactly what you mean. Like, you always get people asking, oh, so how do you make friends? And that's one question that I've always struggled with, because it's like, I mean, you just sort of make friends by going to activities, like what you said, right? And like making friends isn't an issue with being a homeschooler if you want to put in the effort to try and make friends
Mm.
by like going out to activities and all that
Mm.
stuff. Whether you can be bothered or not, it's a different story. Sometimes I just can't be bothered. Yeah, so going to university, it wasn't an issue making friends. I mean, you make a few friends and then you meet their friends and then you sort of have I mean, like, yeah, that's the thing in university. What I feel is you meet a lot of people in the first few weeks and then you sort of have a rough, and then you get to know them better and then you sort of have a rough idea, oh, these are the cool people I want to hang out with. And then you meet them and then they're like, oh, let me introduce you to a few more cool people that I'm friends with. And then you're like, oh, these are some more cool people. And
Mm.
that's sort of how I got my friends.